all here. And I'm going to share my screen here, but I want to start with a statistic that is quite amazing. And that is that there is a revenue gap between men and women entrepreneurs that looks like 28%. I mean, that is crazy. And so what I'd like to ask you, and we certainly understand that, right, in corporate America or in the employed workforce, but why do you think there is such a big discrepancy here? I'd love you to put it in your chat.
Let's see what you have to say. We don't ask. Yeah, Kristen, that's very true. We don't charge enough.
Don't charge enough.
Yes, Amy, Greta, women undervaluing ourselves. Oh yeah, we know that's true. We network differently. Confidence is a problem. We're less aggressive with our pricing. Thank you. Yes.
Great.
Sarin, because we don't even know they are getting 28% more.
I know.
Good point. We don't know, and we don't know the market well enough. Yes.
Very good.
Yes to everything above.
Great. So let's start by being really clear about what we're talking about, and it's about generating revenue. And as an entrepreneur for 27 years, 16 of which have been precision sales coaching, I can tell you that revenue and all of the challenges that come with it is very, very close to my heart. I have had my ups and downs. So we're talking about pricing today, but in the context of revenue. And there are 4 levers to revenue generation, pricing being the one thing that has the most direct impact. And we're going to share with you those other 3 levers, but we want to do the deep dive on pricing first. So I think it's important to start by recognizing that pricing is complex. The largest Fortune 100 companies out there are challenged by it every single day, as is the mom and pops of the world. So it's not something that there is an easy solution to, and therefore we shouldn't approach it as such. And we've got to look at it from all different angles, or we're calling it look at it from the various lenses. And in fact, we want to focus on 5 lenses today. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. I would recommend take out a pen and paper maybe to take some notes. After I go through it, where we're really going to kind of bring this to life is through a couple of case studies. So we have a B2B case study as well as a B2C case study. So the first lens is your base price, right? And that very simply is the hourly rate that you feel comfortable with times the number of hours that you estimate a project or an offering is going to take. And then you may add in some costs that are reimbursed by the client. The problem with this is so many entrepreneurs do this, and they just stop here at the base price. And the problem with stopping at the base price is that that's where you get your revenue plateau. So we want to look at it. We want to start here, but we want to look through those other lenses. And we first want to think about value. And there are 2 ways to think about value. One is the quantitative value. So that's the return on investment. And then we want to think about it from a qualitative perspective. So those are things like, saving time or less stress, things like that. Next lens is cost of inaction. What would happen if the prospect did absolutely nothing? So we want to look at that. We also want to look at what alternatives do they have to you or someone like you. And then finally, we want to look at the competition. And when we're thinking about the competition, we want to look at that from 2 lenses. One is, what do we think that they would quote? And then most importantly, what's the additional value that we provide? How can we really differentiate ourselves? So once we have done that analysis, we want to, and I'm just realizing my slide is out of order here a little bit. So I'm going to say it, it might pop up later. But once we have done the analysis, we also want to come up with a range. And I usually say like 20% range. So this project is feeling, 10,000 to 12,000, let's say something like that. And then we want to think about a couple of other lenses, which is there a budget or is there a price expectation? And secondly, am I in a competitive situation? And that'll help determine if it's that 10 to 12,000. If you don't have competition, you may want to go on the, on the higher side. And if you do, maybe the lower, or if they have a budget in mind that is on the lower side, come in with the lower number. What's really important here, though, is that we're considering the budget after we have done the analysis, because we don't want to be caught in that situation where we are not being compensated for the value. And once we go through the value exercise, if in fact there's an expectation for a lower price, you're going to be on pretty firm ground to talk about why you're pricing it higher. Okay, so we've gone through the lenses and we talked about the range, and now I want to give an example. And this example is one actually that Precision had about a year ago. So it was a B2B large financial institution. And what I'm going to ask everybody to do is put on a Precision hat. Okay, you're a consultant like we are, who is working with a large financial services institution who had 100 people that they wanted to train on a particular investment product. And so we figured out what our base cost would be, and we figured something like 150,000 to train the 150 people or the 100 people. Now, in terms of value, this was a new investment product that if these 100 people sold the product successfully, it would be in the tens of millions of dollars in terms of revenue. So we're going to put $20 million here. Now, the cost of inaction, so not only would they have missed the opportunity cost of the 20 million, but in addition to that, there was an expectation with their current clients, or there would be, that they would offer this to them. So you've got the $20 million that they'd lose for not selling this product, right? And then in addition to that, God only knows, we all know how expensive it is to lose existing clients. Did they have alternatives? Not really. They didn't have the talent in-house to be able to do this. Could they have hired for it? I suppose so, but it probably wouldn't have made a lot of sense for them to do so. And then finally, on the competition, we figured they would price it at 150 to 200,000. So what I'm going to ask you to do with your Precision hat on is I want you to think about how you would price it based on this. So we've got 150,000 base cost. We have tens of millions in terms of the return on investment revenue coming into them. We have a significant cost of inaction. They don't really have any great alternatives. And we think that the competition is going to come in at about 150 to 200. So what do you think? What do you think they'll come in at?
Put that in the chat, folks. We'd love to know how you would price this opportunity. $215,000, $150,000, $300,000. 250,000.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm really glad that nobody's coming in under 150,000, right?
Oh, we have someone at 400,000.
Oh, wow. Okay. So let me tell you what we ended up doing. We ended up pricing it at 275, and they didn't even blink at that. We were pretty confident that we were not in a competitive situation, and we were able to price it that way for a couple of reasons. One is through the sales process, we were able to develop insight through our questioning skills. And not only were we able to find out information about the potential value and things like cost of inaction and alternatives that they were considering, that was helpful for us, but it was also helpful for them because they were not necessarily thinking about these things themselves. So it helped us to position our offer in the context of value. And then finally, we were considered an authority in this particular niche, which was retirement services. So we knew, and they knew, that any competition that they brought in would be unlikely to hit the ground running like we would. We knew their lingo. We understood the product, we understood the culture, we understood the people that we would be training. So that became huge for us. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important to ensure that you niche down. So that's the B2B example. Now let's move to a B2C example. And what I'm going to ask you to do, you can take off your precision hat and you can put on the hat of a relationship coach. And you are a relationship coach who specializes in couples on the brink of divorce. And you've niched down to healthcare, professionals in healthcare. And you have a situation now where 2 doctors are thinking about hiring you for your services to help them in this desperate situation. So your base cost, I'm just going to throw out a number. Let's say it's $15,000. You figure that out. And then what you want to think about, obviously, is the value from a quantitative perspective and a qualitative perspective. So when you think about the quantitative perspective, I can't help but think of MasterCard, right? Priceless to save a marriage. But there's also quite a bit of qualitative considerations that we want to consider as well. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that because it's so critically important in a minute, that value on the qualitative perspective. Next is cost of inaction. And I'm going to ask you all to think about this. If this couple did nothing, what are the potential costs associated with doing nothing? So, for example, one would be divorce attorneys. But what else might there be? If you can put it in the chat.
Let's see what people have to say. Sale of the house, the cost of 2 homes. Yes, for sure. What else might there be? Dividing up property, retirement. Yeah. Therapy for the couple individually, therapy for the kids, childcare. Sure. The cost of telling their families, that's really heavy stuff. And feeling like relationship has failed and carrying that weight around.
And that's where we're going to go to in a minute. That's a great one. So from a quantitative perspective, you can really kind of get a good sense. This is going to cost lots and lots of money. A divorce does, right? We know that. So we want that context and be thinking about that in our pricing. Alternatives. What alternatives do they have? Well, they may have a friend or a family member or a clergy member maybe that they can go to, but probably wouldn't get the value that they would from you. And then finally, the competition. Is there competition out there? Absolutely, right? Lots of relationship coaches. How many of them focus on people on the brink of divorce? It gets smaller, right? And then how many of them really have niched down into healthcare workers? Probably not as many. So let me just take this down for a second, because we want to talk about this issue of value. And particularly from the perspective of the qualitative value. And Linda, do you want to jump in here and talk
Sure.
about that? Because I know we have a lot of coaches on the phone.
I'd be happy to. Value in the B2C world, it can be a little tricky, right? Because you can't always put a number to it. Like Nadine and I went through the institutional B2B example where the value was $20 million. But in real life, sometimes value isn't financial. It can be more emotional. It can be social. It can be about our well-being. And what is the value of a saved marriage? To Nadine's point, it is priceless, but you can still size it, right? Think about small, medium, large, right? When we were interviewing a lot of women entrepreneurs recently in preparation for designing the program that we are now delivering, we heard a lot of folks say that they have trouble selling themselves or selling their service. That was a very common theme. And we would submit to you that there's a different way to think about it, that the reason that we call it services or we call it professional services is because our expertise is actually in service to them, to your client. And goodness knows I'm not the first person to say this, but honestly, I don't think we all can say it enough, that we have to think about it in service of, right? In service of our clients. So if we take ourselves and the actual service that we provide out of the equation, what we're left with is we are in service to them, and we are making it all about them. So what we're really, really selling is not our service. We're selling the transformation. We're selling the promise of a better future. And it really boils down to that individual or that organization's vision that they have for themselves, right? So as you're thinking about your 5 lenses, base price, the value to them, cost of inaction, alternatives they might have, and your competition, if the value is as big as a saved marriage, you can use that when you're coming up with your price because it's big, it's worth a lot to them. And so if you're ever thinking that maybe you're underpricing, think about value in terms of small, medium, large, and you might be confident in raising your price because you are uniquely qualified to help them realize that transformation. How does that resonate for all of you?
And I would also add to that it's the same in the B2B world, where it may be easier to quantify the value in some situations than others. But the reality is that the decision makers that you're talking to, a lot of the value for them is qualitative and not quantitative. It's peace of mind, right? It's being able to save time and things like that are so, so important. Okay, so we'll get back to the slides here. And there was the missing slide. So after the analysis, again, I'll just reinforce it. We want to determine the range, and we want to be thinking about if there are price expectations. If we are in a competitive situation, it will help us to determine where we are on that range. So now I want to talk about pricing a brand new offer. So this may be something, that you want to offer your existing clients. And in doing this, there is a terrific opportunity to ask your ideal clients. So it's a great opportunity for a couple of reasons. One is it helps you to validate the idea. And second is you will more likely come in the you'll know what the sweet spot is basically for your pricing. And for those of you who participated in some of the interviews that Linda and I conducted, that we asked you about price, and we asked questions like, what would you expect to pay for something like this? It can be really also very insightful to ask questions like, at what point would this just feel too high for you? And at what point would it be too low? Because if something is priced too low, it's going to feel like it's lacking value. So we encourage you to, to talk to your ideal clients when pricing a new offer. So now just want to talk about the psychology of a number really quickly. And we all know that we are, as humans, we look at numbers in all sorts of ways. And one that I think is very familiar to everybody is the idea, you might not know the term, but charm pricing, which basically means that we focus on that first digit most. And that is the reason why we get when we go to Walmart, we get the $9.99 or the $9.97, or I mean, I have to admit that when I buy a dress and it's $260, I'm thinking it's more like $200 than $300. So we've got the charm pricing, probably not appropriate for us because I think it can read very unauthentic to our clients. There's also round number pricing, and that is best suited for the big numbers, 150, 200, 500,000, where basically you're communicating to the client that let's not sweat the details on this, or let's not nickel and dime. There's off number pricing, and I'm a huge fan of this and have used it throughout my time at, with Precision, which basically suggests to the client that, you'll notice this number, it's not 12,000, it's not 12,500, it's 12,800. Very, very specific. And I think it communicates that, this number, we put a lot of thought into this, and this is our number and it is firm. And then also, if you are presenting your price in a proposal, we know from research that if it is in bold, it communicates that it is in fact firm and not negotiable. So just some things to think about as you are thinking about that exact price that you are going to quote. Now, discussing price. This came up a lot in our interviews, and we have found that women are very uncomfortable discussing price. So a few tips here. One is price after value. It's got to be in the context of the value that the client will be receiving from you, not before it. You get yourself in big trouble if that happens. Secondly, is we want to state our price with confidence. And if you go through the process that we suggested that you go through, it is a lot easier to do this because you are so clear on the value that you are bringing to this client that you can state your price with confidence. You know that they are going to get a significant return on their investment, whether it be quantitative or qualitative. And that gives you the confidence to state your price. And then once we state our price, we want to be quiet if it's in a, if you're in a conversation. When we do role plays, we've seen time and time again where somebody states the price and then they feel like they have to justify the price. Just be quiet and let the prospect react to it. So at the beginning of this, I said that there were 4 levers of revenue generation, and we were going to focus on one. I want to tell you what those other 3 are. And as Linda mentioned earlier, we want to share with you this revenue calculator that we've put together and we're really excited about. So price, first lever, will have the most direct impact on the bottom line. Second is leads, and these aren't in order, but leads, right? If you increase the number of leads that you have and your conversion rate stays the same, you will increase your revenue. Your conversion rate, if your leads stay the same and you increase your ability to turn those leads into paying customers, your revenue will increase. And finally, you can also increase your revenue by offering an additional, or offering basically an additional product maybe to existing clients. For today, we're going to focus on these 3. And the reason why is the offering is very, very specific to your business. What is really interesting about this is that if you pull one of these levers, you will have an increase in revenue, but you'll have that black line there. If you pull 2, of the levers, you get significantly more revenue increase. And then look at that red line. So it shows that to the extent that you can pull more than one lever, it will serve you well. So now let's go to our calculator here. And as Linda mentioned, this lives on our site, on a hidden page on our site, but we're going to give you the link. And basically, this is what it looks like. This is what I just reviewed with you. Now we have two calculators here. One is a very simple calculator. The other one allows you to reverse engineer to your revenue goals. So let me show you what that looks like. So we ask you a couple of questions here. The first is, what's your average monthly new revenue? Okay, so this is an existing revenue that's coming in. It's just on average, what does your monthly new revenue looks like? So let's say in this example that it's at 15,000. And by the way, you can do this with annual numbers and the math works the same. What is your monthly revenue goal? Well, why don't we be ambitious and say we want to double our revenues? How many clients did you close last month? Let's say 5. And how many leads did you have? We'll put in 30. All right. The next thing it's going to do, it's going to ask you to pull your levers. So how much do you want to prioritize increasing your price? Well, you may say, oh, I just went to this great webinar and I'm feeling very confident about that. So I am going to really I'm going to really increase my price. We'll do the more here. Okay. How much do you want to prioritize increasing your conversion rate? You know, I think I have some work to do there. I could definitely get better in sales. And how much do you want to prioritize increasing the number of leads? You know, I think I'm going to have my hands full with these two at the moment. So let's see what this looks like when we focus on those. So right now, my current price is 3,000. This is telling me if I increase my price to 5,400 roughly, and I increase my conversion ratio by just a little bit, I will double my revenue. But you know what? I'm all for raising my prices, but that 5,000 seems a little high to me. So I'm going to take that down a bit and I'm going to bring up the conversion ratio and take a look at what that looks like. And now this is feeling better. So I need to go to about 4,200 in my pricing. And the conversion rate was pretty low, 16%. Average is 20%. So I think I could definitely hit 23%. I'm going to keep my leads the same for now. And look, I have doubled my revenue. And so what we've done here is to help you to think through the strategy is based on how you answer these questions. We've got questions for you that when you answer will help you to develop a strategy to get you there. So this one is about the price, and this one is about the conversion rate. And then we've got some in here in terms of lead generation as well. So we invite you to play with that. We think that it is, it can be very inspiring to take a look at that, where maybe sometimes when you think about, you know, doubling my revenue seems out of reach. When you look at how you pull those levers, it feels like you can come within reach without going too crazy. So, all right, let's go back here. And I think it's really important to recognize that in order to pull these levers, there are a series of disciplines, skills, and processes that support your ability to do that. And they are all interlinked. So, I mean, we talked about niche having an impact on price, right? And mindset, certainly, and brand on leads. And facilitation on your conversion rate and presentation skills and needs analysis and all of that. And we could go on and on. And what's important here is we want to get these things working together so that we can build out the team and begin to assume the role of CEO. And that's really what our program is all about, is taking all of those things and putting them in a logical sequence, providing skills and tools and disciplines that will help you to get there. Our program we're calling the Revenue Growth Accelerator. And what we want to do is take 60 seconds to talk to you a little bit about what that looks like. And then we want to take some questions on today's session. So Linda, do you want to talk about the program?
Yes, for sure. So while you all are formulating your questions, and feel free to put those in the chat, but you can also come off of mute and ask your question live in another minute. Either way, we'll get to questions in just a moment. A little bit about our Founders Club program. It's launching in October. It is designed for you. It is designed for ambitious women entrepreneurs selling professional services who are determined to grow their revenue in record time. So if that sounds like you and you're interested and you simply want to learn more, put a yes in the chat or set up a call with us. Here is, I'm going to put a Calendly link in the chat right now. You can link to that if you'd like to book with us. The Founders Club will be a very small exclusive group because we want to be sure that you achieve the transformation you're looking for. It's going to be high touch, a combination of live training, group coaching, and one-on-one coaching, and it will be very attractive to those who qualify. So the first program will be the lowest price we offer, and the final deadline to enroll is in early October. We would love to talk with you to tell you more about it. Calendly link is in the chat. Feel free to book some time with us, and let's get on to Q&A. All right. So our first question in the chat, Nadine, is it advised to lower your initial bid to get the bid to try to get more business from the same people or break into a certain industry?
Okay, so there's I think a couple of things to unpack there, if I understand it. So the first part of that question is to get in, if I understand it, to get into a particular client, lower your bid. I think that there's a challenge there because once you are in with a certain number that they have in their head on how you charge, it's going to be harder to increase it. The second part of the question, as I understood it, was to get into a new industry. Is that right? Yes.
Yeah.
I think so. And I think it can make sense before you have really developed a reputation and a niche there. You want to, make yourself attractive so that you can, in fact, over time, and this is what is so important, is that pricing is not a one and done kind of thing. You need to be reviewing and analyzing your pricing all the time. And as you develop your niche and as you develop your expertise, it will enable you to increase pricing over time.
Okay. Can I ask you one question? The reason I ask is because we have a company that has multiple disciplines that have a variety of skill sets here. And so if we get in one place and we land and expand, there might be another offer that we can give them that could get to a higher point of sale. So I'm just wondering, is it good to go the lower bid to get in and then land and expand?
And you're talking, Lisa, about a particular client, correct?
Yeah, so we have offerings of anything from strategic development to DEI workshops to branding to coaching. Like we have multiple things that we can offer one client that works as a holistic alternative to just going to a bunch of different agencies. It's under one roof. So if we get in, for instance, for like a branding project, or we get in for like a leadership development program, is it better to do it a little bit lower so that you get in and then you can use your other services? And you see what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. I wouldn't go so low that they would have an expectation for, low
Yeah.
pricing across the board. But I
Yeah.
think in that situation, it's another lens that you want to look through and,
Okay.
analyze.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have the next question coming in from Carol. She has this scenario. An existing client is asking for a proposal for delivering something similar to what they're already doing with that client. Should they put the pricing in the first draft of the proposal, or send a proposal recapping the needs and value and schedule a call to confirm that it's right, and then on the call, deliver the price?
I like the latter, right? With the idea that you are positioning your pricing in the context of value. Really important.
Yeah, particularly if they're asking for something similar to what you're already doing, you kind of want to unpack that, right? If it's similar to what you're already doing, what is it that they are needing in addition to that? And you want the opportunity to talk with them about that.
Thank you.
There was an earlier question, I didn't miss it. Is it true ending in a 7 increases purchases?
So that's the charm pricing. So yes, it is true on a retail level. To what extent it is true in the bigger ticket is questionable. I would say that the challenge with charm pricing, the 97 or the 99, is it can look a little inauthentic. And as I said earlier, we see it all the time in Target and Walmart, and we don't want to be a Target in Walmart. So I would prefer to end with a 5 or a 0 and solidly stand on the value that I'm bringing to the client.
Yes, we're not a big fan of charm pricing in professional services. Are there other questions that are live? Because you all submitted a lot of questions in advance, and I can go to one of those while you put more questions into the chat function. So one that's interesting is, what if they say the price is too high?
Right. So we, obviously we want to avoid that to the extent that we can by demonstrating the value. However, if you're at a situation where they are saying, you know what, I just can't do it, or we have a budget and this is what is set for it, the important thing there is to revisit the proposal and what you were going to do, and not just slash it down, right? Like, okay, instead of 20,000, I'll do it for 15,000. Say, you know what, we really want to work with you. We want to work within your budget. Let's take a look and see what we can, subtract. So in my world, my old world of B2B, it may be that I am going to do something virtually instead of in person, or we're going to train fewer people, that kind of thing. But we never want to just kind of slash the price. We also want to understand what's behind it. And I think this is really important for the coaches that we have, is that get them talking, right? So this price is too high. Well, can you say a little bit more about that? Because how they answer that question has everything to do with how you are going to approach it. If they could answer it by saying it's too high compared to someone else, right? Then then you can find out, well, can I ask you a little bit about who you're talking to and what they've proposed to you, etc. It may be it's too high because I just don't have the budget for it, right? Which some of you coaches, that can happen to quite a bit, in which case you want to ask them, are you comfortable having a conversation about your situation right now? Because we'd love to work with you, but I want to understand what it is, right? So the key here is getting the information before doing anything about it, because without that information, you're going to be making assumptions that will get you into trouble. Does that make sense with everybody?
Okay, thank you. That was a really excellent answer. We have this question. How do I price like a man?
You price like a man by doing everything that we talked about today, right? Looking at it from all different angles so that you can confidently see the value that you were bringing to the table. We all know we all are bringing as much value to the table as a man is. What we're not doing is we're not doing it with confidence. The way we get confidence is through data and insight and understanding and looking at it from all different angles.
Exactly. Another question, how do I determine pricing between coaching individuals and coaching inside organizations? I do both. I coach individuals and I will place a proposal inside to a corporation. Yes.
Great question. So I guess my question would be, are you adding more value in a corporate situation, or can you add more value in a corporate situation than a one-on-one situation? And depending on what that answer is, and I think that a lot of you could make an argument that when you are coaching an individual in an organization, you are having impact larger than that organization. If it is someone who has people reporting to him or her, right? Your coaching will ultimately have an impact on them. So I think that you can make an argument that your pricing would be different in a corporate situation than an individual situation. I think you also have to take into consideration the investment that you are making to close that deal. And as we all know who have worked in B2B situations, and particularly the large corporations, there can be many hurdles, things like procurement, et cetera, to go through before being able to close a deal, where when you are working one-on-one with an individual, it can be a shorter sales cycle.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. There's two more. How do I determine if I should base my price on an hourly rate versus a project-based rate?
So I think you have a lot more room for value if you were pricing it on a project base. There's also hourly rates. I have found that people judge them more than project rate. And it is a lot harder to do value-based pricing. So my suggestion has always been to do the project rate. Now, there are some situations where there may be add-ons, and there's a lot of situations. Has anybody been a victim of scope creep on the phone, right? Yes, where you want to be able to have a strategy for what happens when there's scope creep and what happens when there is something needed extra. The good news about the value pricing is it gives you a little wiggle room so that you're not nickel and diming the client, but you don't want to be taken advantage of there as well. What's really important here is that when you present your pricing, and I'm talking more in a situation of B2B, but it has application to B2C as well, get very specific, right? How many coaching sessions? How many interviews are you going to conduct? How long, how many revisions are there if you're in marketing? Get very, very specific on it so that if it goes over goes over the scope of the project, you can sit down and say, you know what, that is slightly out of scope, but let's sit down and take a look and see if we can move things around, or if you would like us to submit a separate proposal. But I do think it's important that when you've got the value pricing, so back to the B2B example where we price that at $275,000, if they wanted, for example, a couple of more people to be trained, I'm not going to nickel and dime them on that. And I've got plenty of room to be able to do that. You know, I consider myself the Nordstroms and not the Walmart, right? Or the first class versus the, you know, where you're being charged for every glass of wine in the back of the plane.
Kristen, you had said in the chat that you were hoping to ask a follow-up, I think, to the previous question, if you want to chime in here.
Yeah, thank you. So I normally go in and work with the CEO first in a company, and then I'm asked, can you work? Okay, great. That worked. I love it. Can you work with this team of 5 leadership executives and this team? I have so much trouble pricing because I normally work one-on-one or in small groups. So someone says, can you train the next 10 people on public speaking and their presentation? I am guessing what I'm charging. So is there a formula for that? Thank you.
It's you know what, it is the exact same formula, Kristen, that we went through. So I would figure out, you know, your base price, which is going to be the bottom, right, that you would charge. And that's usually, you know, you come up with the hourly rate for yourself, and then you think about how long it's going to take. Or you could, you know, maybe you already, your presentation skills, right? So, you know, maybe you already have a formula for that. But then I would really take a good look at the value from the quantitative perspective and the qualitative perspective. And that value on presentation skills from the qualitative perspective is huge, because as we all know, there is a lot of fear out there with the public, you know, with public speaking. So I'd look at that. I would look at the cost of inaction. You know, how are these people? So when you're doing your needs analysis or whatever, you're asking about, you know, who are they presenting to now, and how's it going, and what's the opportunity lost there potentially, and are there internal sources that they can, what alternatives do they have to hiring somebody like you, and then also your competition. So I think that same framework holds true in this situation. Does that make sense?
Great. Thank you. All right, last question. How do I get better visibility into what the market, what the competitors are charging?
I know that can be pretty tough. So one way is through your existing clients. I've had many situations where, you know, I've developed relationships with people in the industry over time, and this niche again helps here, and they will offer up what the competition is charging. You know, you can certainly do research, but I would say, as important it is to figure out what your competitors' pricing is, you want to be premium pricing anyway, which means that the number one thing that you want to be thinking about is the value that you can bring above and beyond the competition. But in terms of finding out what it is, you know, research online, ask your, you know, existing clients or other relationships that you have, people who may have recently left your competitors, who you may know, who will, you know, give you some insight into it.
Okay, thank you. I am going to post the Calendly link one more time in the chat. Wait a minute, that might have not gone to everyone. Did that go to everyone? Maybe not. All right, here's the Calendly link in the chat. We would love to talk with you if you are interested in our founders program. We are very grateful that you've joined us today. I hope you took tremendous value and good notes, and we look forward to talking with you.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thank you.